So, you want to be a graphic designer. Well then, you've come to the right place. In this video we're going to be going over 10 things you shouldn't do when graphic designing. This can apply to web pages, signs, logos, thumbnails, handouts, forms, CVs, and most especially PowerPoints. So that if you don't do these things, you might look a little less like a child in computer classes messing around with word art and more like a professional user. This is part 1 of So You Want to Be a Graphic Designer. The first and most important rule of graphic design is to never, and I repeat never, use Comic Sans if you want to be taken even the slightest bit seriously. This rule also applies to stock fonts in titles, or basically anything that isn't paragraphy text. Stock fonts to avoid would be Calibri, of any variation, Arial, New Times Roman, Algerian, and that one that teachers use to be cool that I can never remember the name of. The thing is, if you want to look new and fresh, just take a title font, and if you think that you've seen that on cliche posters that someone with no technical skill has designed, then don't use that font. There are tons of fonts that come with your Office suite, some even in different flavors, such as bold, semi-bold, light, condensed, and some just normal. Just experiment and see what works. The second thing you should never do is put grainy images in anything. If you're on Google, searching for images, like everyone does, there's a little box of dimensions in the corner. Ideally, those dimensions should be 1920 by 1080, aka 1080p. However, those dimensions can lie to you. If a picture says a really high resolution, like 3840 and 2160, which is 4K, but you've seen bigger post stamps, then the image is very low quality and you shouldn't use it. Next links to the last one, but is slightly different. If an image doesn't fit, then crop it. Never, ever stretch an image to fit a space. It doesn't matter that you think it looks perfectly fine. The keen-eyed amongst your audience will notice. Ways to avoid this would be to crop it to the right size, and if you're using the image for the background and things like PowerPoint, there's a very useful crop to aspect ratio tool that you can use to get it to the perfect size, usually 16 by 9. Just be careful. Now this one is for the teachers out there, or the up-and-coming ones. Now PowerPoints are a great tool for learning, and are used a lot more now with online schooling. But the thing is, if you want to start the slideshow, don't go to the slideshow tab, then click start from beginning. Just use F5, the keyboard shortcut. Just a note, it might be function F5 if you're using a new laptop, and instead of start from the current slide, just hit Shift F5. You'll look like a technological wizard. Number 5 is simple. In PowerPoint, don't use too many slide animations. I'm talking about that spinny thing on those images, and making each bullet point bounce into the PowerPoint. PowerPoints are meant to be minimal. Not that kind of minimal, Mozilla, but they should be in the background. And when they're exciting, because you thought that animation looked cool, the slideshow just becomes distracting. The next is one you probably hear all the time, but it's important. For anything meant to be on display. Less is more. Don't overcrowd your page with walls of text. People just want to read about 3 lines before they lose interest. So make it brief, and it will be something people will want to read, and not scared to read. Next is very important. Slides are meant to have points that summarize the information presented. Not a copy-paste of the speech you're meant to be presenting so that you can quickly read it during the presentation. Number 8 also applies to PowerPoint. You know those stock templates? Don't touch them. Everybody uses them and they're getting just a little old. If you don't want to start from scratch, just search that little bar at the top for a theme you're going for. Something like paint, cubes, abstract, or something equally mundane, and you should find an original template. The same does apply for other programs in the Office suite, in case you need something to work off of. Rule number 9 is don't go crazy. Whether on a report or web page, PowerPoint or spreadsheet, Don't spam images or different fonts and titles absolutely everywhere. Part of designing something and having access to all the tools presented to you is not to use them all in one project. The simpler something is, the easier and more pleasant it is to look at. And finally, rule number 10 is to never use Comic Sans. This video is sponsored by coffee, for obvious reasons, but not in the way you'd think. You see, on my Patreon, if you don't know already, there's a coffee for an NPC package. And I've decided to put my money where my mouth is, and now, if you buy that patron package, I will buy a coffee and put the names of all my patron, singular, on there. So, if you'd like to join this and have your name on a coffee and join the one lonely patron there, the link will be in the description. But that was part 1 of So You Want to Be a Graphic Designer, and I'll see you in the next one.